Sandbox funding, in some cases known as black box funding, makes up for 75% of the outstanding portfolio on Debitum, which is why the lender is currently the biggest and the most important pillar on the Latvian marketplace. Although investors can see Sandbox funding assets quite often on the platform, very little is actually known about the Latvian lender, which in a way forms the backbone of the SME marketplace. For this reason, today's video will be a deep dive into the profile and the background story of Sandbox funding. How does the lender operate? How does the financial performance look like? And how much transparency is the lender really lacking at the end of the day? Sandbox funding is a lender based in Latvia, founded on March 30th, 2023. With Sandbox funding, investors can invest in business loans from companies that are not yet listed as independent lenders on Debitum. A look at the Latvian company register reveals that Sandbox funding is owned by the two current Debitum shareholders, whereby the distribution of shares is almost identical. If we could answer the question of why Sandbox funding was founded with only one word, it would be speed. Debitum has been an investment brokerage firm since September 2021, which is regulated under MiFID II and supervised by the Latvian Financial Supervision Authority. As a result, extensive prospectuses must be submitted if the platform wants to issue securities from new lenders. The resources that are required for this procedure are the main reason why Debitum is often unable to seize many market opportunities. In this regard, it should be noted that Debitum CEO Eric Sringitis has a very good and strong network in Latvia based on his previous career in the M&A market. When financing opportunities arise at short notice, even on a smaller scale, Debitum is often unable to act quickly enough to take advantage of certain opportunities due to the regulatory framework. For this reason, Sandbox funding has been created as a tool to have quicker access to attractive market opportunities.
Since we're regulated, we have certain limitations how we can issue loans. So we decided that we want to build one loan originator which is owned by Debitum in order to not miss on good investment opportunities where you need to be quick.
Next up, let's take a closer look at how Sandbox funding operates. In general, all new companies that are interested in using the Debitum platform as a source of funding are initially tested through Sandbox funding. In addition to standardized credit checks, collateral is collected from the lender and a 10% equity stake is formed by Sandbox funding itself. In order to bring the assets onto the platform, Debitum must prepare investment prospectuses and submit them to the Latvian Financial Supervisory Authority. These can initially only comprise up to a maximum of 8 million euro per individual lender. Following up on this topic, I learned that there are also internal financing limits for lenders within Sandbox, which are currently at 5 million euro.
When we issue something in the platform, we need to have legal framework for that. So we have had 8 million limit for Sandbox for last year, and we needed to reapply for new prospectus. So we used 8 million, and then we had to pause Sandbox because it was going so well that the limit was full. And then we need to resubmit with new documentation, wait for regulator to be approved, and then we had this interruption.
During the first cooperation via Sandbox funding, Debitum is looking at the following aspects: the financial performance, the willingness to prepare a prospectus, which must be submitted to the regulator, the overall cooperation discipline, including reporting, timely repayments and communication, as well as a trustworthiness assessment based on the internal risk assessment methodology. Juno and Foresto are two lenders that initially started off via Sandbox funding before later on being added as independent lenders. With that in mind, some investors may wonder why some assets on Debitum carry titles such as Juno by Sandbox funding or Foresto by Sandbox funding. As I was able to find out, also this is due to regulatory reasons and restrictions. Juno and Foresto were initially introduced to Debitum as note issuers. Following an evaluation, the regulator approved each company's issuance of short-term bond notes with a total of 1 million euro per company, which were then fully funded. Since preparing a full prospectus would have been time-consuming for both Debitum and the affected borrowers, it was decided to raise the funds under the existing prospectus of Sandbox funding. In some cases, Sandbox funding is also referred to as black box funding, which is why we want to take a closer look at how much transparency the lender is actually lacking. Upon my inquiry, I was informed that there are currently 6 companies operating within the Sandbox funding umbrella. All borrowers come from Latvia, the domestic market of the peer-to-peer platform. Those companies are represented in all core industries, including the energy sector, construction and SME financing. Additional information about the lender can also be found on the Sandbox funding website. The requirements for obtaining financing via Sandbox funding include a minimum turnover of 100,000 euros, an operating activity of at least 3 months, a location in the European Union or the European Economic Area, a credit rating of C+ or better, as well as a proof of a commercial pledge and/or a mortgage as collateral. The loan terms can last between 3 and 72 months. The minimum amount for a loan is 5,000 euros, while there is theoretically no upper limit. Debitum itself has recently commented on some KPIs of Sandbox funding as well. By the end of the year, a total of 28.5 million euros had been financed via Sandbox, with 1.2 million euros in interest already returned and 10.5 million euros in capital. The average interest rate was 13.21%, which is quite competitive in the current market environment. The financial performance should be assessed as part of the transparency debate as well. A publicly accessible register shows that Sandbox achieved a turnover of 131,000 euros in 2023, while suffering a loss of 25,000 euros. On Debitum's lender page, investors can also review some financial reports from the past, including the last official report from September 2023 to September 2024. According to this report, the revenue in this period totaled 447,000 euros with a profit of 52,000 euros. Investors should take into account, though, that those numbers haven't been audited externally. In its almost 2-year-long history, Sandbox funding didn't suffer any repayment difficulties or delays. The fact that some problems have happened in the past, though, has been openly communicated and admitted by Debitum itself. According to Debitum, the Latvian company Zia Power Capital, one of the borrowers beneath the Sandbox funding umbrella, had problems repaying 2.2 million euros due to a loan restructuring. Sandbox funding has therefore stepped in and serviced the repayment obligation with its own funds. Upon my inquiry, no further problems apart from the company in question are said to have occurred to date. To wrap up this video, let's come to a conclusion and my personal opinion. From my perspective, Sandbox funding offers an innovative and exciting lender approach that perfectly fits the business needs of Debitum. On one side, Sandbox funding allows Debitum the opportunity to respond quickly to financing requests in the market that would otherwise be difficult to serve within the official regulatory process. On the other side, this mechanism offers an excellent opportunity to start cooperations on a small scale, which can later develop into independent lenders on the marketplace. For us as investors, this approach requires a certain amount of trust, as it is often impossible to judge in detail which assets are being financed. For this reason, a certain lack of transparency remains, even though Debitum has provided a lot of information upon request. Something else to consider is the extent to which borrower payments can be covered in the event of large-scale defaults. However, this is a problem that investors need to deal with almost any other lender anyway. The fact that it's clear from the outset that the lender belongs to the Debitum shareholders also emphasizes how seriously they must take the success of Sandbox funding, considering the future growth of the platform. What is your personal take on Sandbox funding? Please let me know your thoughts and your ideas in the comment section below. Thanks so much for watching until the end, and I hope to see you guys in the next one as well. So long. Bye bye.